It's like Eat, Pray, Love, Discover Yourself, but post-apocalypse with no one around to fall in love with. Hi, this is Charlie Airy, and this is my anticipated reads Mark 2. If you don't know what that is, I go through loads of publishing catalogues and find what I think will be interesting that's coming out this month. As a cheeky little update, I actually bought one of the books from the first anticipated reads of this year, which is The Most Precious of Cargoes by Jean-Claude Grunberg, and I'm going to be doing a reading vlog this month about it because it's very short, and I think I'm going to go for a nice walk to a local park and maybe to the beach and just have a read and share my thoughts with you. My first pick of this month is Caleb Azuma Nelson's Open Water, which has been quite rated by a few booktubers already. This is about two young black artists in London who find love and are trying to get in touch with their own vulnerability in a world that has tried to harden them. And I just think that sounds like a really, really beautiful story. From booktubers that I know who have read Arcs, they've said it is beautiful, and I just really am here for a book like that. I think trying to find your vulnerability, especially as a minority, is such a brave thing really to do in this world. I know that sounds a bit patronising, but I do mean it. My second book is kind of a different tone. It's by Bethany Clift and it's called The Last One at the Party, and I think it sounds like a lot of fun. I don't know if it's meant to be a comedy, but it sounds like a comedy to me. So it centres around this woman who has never really had a life for herself. She's always been living for other people. Her identity is built around other people, and there is a virus that wipes out the entire human race apart from her. And instead of it being some sort of bleak story, it actually sounds like she's like, finally, I can do some self-discovery without all these people around, and she figures out who she is without people, which I think sounds both hilarious and really interesting at the same time. I think a lot of women are put in the shoes of their lives being lived for other people. It's like Eat, Pray, Love, Discover Yourself, but post-apocalypse with no one around to fall in love with. I think that sounds fun. A bit of a self-love story, but with a funny twist. So yeah, I'm happy to give that a go. Next is Sexuality, a Graphic Guide by Meg John Barker and Jules Scheel, and this is kind of a follow-on from Queer, a Graphic Guide. Icon Books do lots of graphic guides. I think this would be a really nice sort of history lesson. It just seems really appealing to me as a queer person. So educational, but also with nice pictures for people like me who like pictures. So yeah. Next is the Love Letters of Kings and Queens, edited by Daniel Smith. And this just calls to me because at university I got the chance to do a paleography class. If you don't know what paleography is, then it's trying to read really, really old writing, 16th, 15th century, beyond, decode it and translate it into modern English. I really hope that there's some of that in this, because obviously Daniel Smith would have done the hard work of all the paleography to decode some of these letters, or he went and found paleographers who did that, and I'm just really interested in that side of it, to be honest. Though obviously it will be interesting to see the relationships between kings and queens. I'm gonna have to look this one up and see if it does include some of the how we did this stuff, because I think that is what gets my interest the most, the potential of knowing how they did it or what the original letters looked like. So yeah, this is a solid maybe. Next is A Net for Small Fishes by Lucy Yago, or Jago. This book really got me purely on someone's endorsement saying it's Thelma and Louise but the 17th century, and I am here for that. I am so here for that. It sounds like sort of a friendship between two women who are from totally different backgrounds and have different things to offer. I think they're of a different class, so them hanging around at the 17th century would have been strange anyway. I have a feeling it might be a little bit queer, but I'm not gonna promise that. But yeah, sounds really good to me. That's all I need to know. This next book isn't new, it was actually published in 1997, but Penguin have got Bernardine Evaristo to choose a selection of books to re-release for Black History Month as part of a series called Black Britain Writing Back. And this book is by Judith Bryan and it's called Bernard and the Cloth Monkey. It's about a black woman who has gone back to her home in London after years and years of being estranged from her family. I think one of her parents is dead, the other is ill, so she is just there with her sister, and it sounds like all about rediscovering her home and her past and her relationship with her sister. And I think that sounds really interesting and reflective, and I'm here for it. The next book kind of feels in the same vein as Luster by Raven Leilani, kind of a millennial novel where the main character gets involved with a non-monogamous person, but I've heard that this is a bit more sexy. It's Insatiable by Daisy Buchanan, and it's about a millennial woman who kind of gets involved with her female boss and is sort of invited into this world of lust and orgies and all this kind of indulgent stuff, and she's trying to figure out whether she wants this life for herself or whether it's just sort of the idea of what she might want for herself. So yeah, I was curious to read something kind of non-monogamous again and millennial. This is set in the UK, so set in London. I've heard mixed reviews, so I'm not sure. I think I might pick it up, but we'll have to see, because some people have said it's a bit too on the sexy side rather than exploring the dynamics and the introspective part, the character work. If it's too like sexy, I've said sexy so many times now, if there's too much of that, then maybe I won't get it. Who knows? We'll see. We'll have a think about it. Read some reviews. Next is a non-fiction book by Sam Mills called Chauveau Feminism, and it's about Chauveau feminists, which is, I don't know if it's a brand new term, I've not come across it before, but it's defining these men who use feminism to get ahead in their careers but don't actually believe in feminist ideals. And yeah, I'm very interested in that. I think everyone has probably met a Chauveau feminist in their time, and I think it's something that isn't spoken about enough. It's like, if people show up for the press and say what they should say, then that's okay, rather than actually seeing whether they back up these ideals with their actions. This would be an interesting non-fiction read. I'm interested, definitely, yeah. Next is some translated fiction from Fitzcarraldo Editions. They're popping up again in my anticipated reads because they are just releasing some good stuff. It's Maria Stepanova's In Memory of Memory. She's a Russian Jewish writer, and this story is non-fiction memoir-ish. She's going to her dead aunt's house to clear out her stuff, and she discovers a century's worth of her Jewish family history, and the whole book is just picking through that, and I think that sounds really interesting. Maria Stepanova's quite popular in Russia. I've not heard of her myself, but that might be just me being out of the loop. Yeah, I think this sounds really interesting. I think exploring people's houses after they've died is just like a really sobering and kind of gloomy experience, but also really interesting being able to just see into someone's life in such an unfiltered way. I'm curious about this. The next one I will definitely be buying is the third in a series of Becky Chambers, and it's called The Galaxy and the Ground Within. Future Charlie here. I was actually mistaken. This is the fourth and final in the Wayfair series, and there has been one since called Record of the Spaceborne few. My editor, Shivek, informed me of this. Their details are in the comments, and I'm glad they did, because that means I have yet another book to read this year of Becky Chambers, and I am really enjoying her stuff. Just as another aside, I'm not really giving you any details on this book because I kind of want to keep the surprises for myself. I was happy to see, well, happy and surprised to see who the newest protagonist was in the second book, and I want to keep that surprise going for myself for pure enjoyment of it. So yeah, back to the video. So each of these in the series, they follow a different person's story. So I assume we'll be following someone's life who we've maybe come across, but we haven't actually got to know properly and in depth. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that, and I'm loving the second book so far. Becky Chambers just writes in a really, I don't know, kind of modern way. I feel like Becky Chambers and I are from the same zeitgeist. She subtly puts some queer stuff in there, but it's not made a big deal of, and because there are different species involved, she does species really well. Because there are different species involved, she gets to create these different cultures and backgrounds that sometimes reflect queer lives here in this world, but makes it sort of basis of a culture. And I just think what she does is really interesting, and every character has kind of something that makes them outside of the norm, and I just really connect with that. So yeah, Becky Chambers. The next book really has my interest. It's by Niven Govinden, and it's called Diary of Film. So it's about an auteur who is, if you don't know what auteur is, it's like a famous film director that's kind of known by name, and people will watch their movies just because it's their movie, like Wes Anderson, Quentin Tarantino, Spike Lee, Godard, and I think he gets his train diverted or gets stuck in a city that he's not meant to be in on his way to do a film, and he meets this stranger, a woman, and goes walking around this city with her, and she basically tells him her life story. I think this is a reference to a film, and I can't remember the flipping name of it, but I love it. But I have a feeling this might give lots of little nods to films throughout this, just because of this description. So this author goes walking with a stranger woman that he's just met, and she tells him this story of her life, and he's like, I have to tell your story, which sounds, you know, really inspiring, being like the artist's muse. But what is hinted at in the sort of copywriting describing this book is that this book explores who gets to tell whose story, and I think that is going to be the bit that really pulls me in and makes me buy this book. Especially if you think about auteurs, like, they're pretty much always men. I can't actually name an auteur that's a man, not like a really famous person that would be a household name. So can we tell each other stories? There's this matter of own voices. There's this, you know, whose right is it to tell a story? Can an artist just take someone's story? Blah. There's so much to explore. I want to read this. Oh, I'm gonna have to buy another book. I might. Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to buy this one. This next book also reminds me of a book I mentioned last month, which is We Are Not in This World by Conor O'Callaghan. And it reminds me a bit of Aphasia in the way it's tackling this dichotomy, if you will, between being a father and being a romantic and sexual person. So this story is a man post-love affair is in a lorry driving to France, and his daughter, who I believe is either a teenager or a young woman, I think she's a young woman, is kind of stowed away for some reason. Maybe she snuck in, I don't know if it's purposeful or not, but she's stowed away in his lorry, so they're kind of stuck together, and I assume they have some bonding to do. I kind of like this trapped room element of the story. I always like that kind of thing. One act, one scene. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Again, very male story about fatherhood and, you know, romance lost. So very reflective, quite a quiet book maybe. We'll see. Maybe it could have something happen on the border. We don't know if it's going to mention anything about refugees or anything like that. We'll have to figure it out. We'll have to see. But yeah, I'm curious. It's an interesting type of a book, I guess, as we have more men now that have taken a larger part in their children's lives and are trying to become good fathers, compared with 20th century idea of a father that is this very kind of distant figure. So maybe this is going to be a new kind of book of exploring fatherhood by exploring the personal life as well. Maybe there's a little trend there, don't know. This next book is a non-fiction book, and it's interesting to me on a personal level. It's called The Wild Track by Margaret Reynolds, and it's about her when she was in her 40s. She's a lesbian, I guess that's relevant, and she decides that she wants to adopt a child on her own. And I'm just quite interested in how that happens, how a woman on her own in her 40s goes and adopts a child, because I would potentially be interested in adopting. That's my one option in my eyes for children. So yeah, I'm curious about this. I've not really read up about adoption before, so maybe this is just a sign that I need to read up about it and see what it is really like. The last anticipated read for this month is by Lucy Ann Holmes, well, edited by her. She is the No More Page 3 woman. She was like the head of the campaign a few years back, and this book is called Women on Top of the World, and it is all about women's sex lives. It kind of sounds like vagina monologues, but she's gone all over the world and tried to find as many varied and different women as she can to talk about their sex lives, and I think that's really interesting. I think she's tried to cover her ground. She's even included non-binary voices in, which I'm like, I've seen this a couple of times where non-binary voices are just sort of put under the kind of same umbrella as women, which I'm a bit, okay, nice to be included, but I guess all you're trying to say is we're looking at the experience of non-men. This sounds like a good book nonetheless. Like, it's good to have inclusion. I'm not going to get picky about including non-binary voices. It'll be nice to read about. Basically, Vagina Monologues just needs an update, and we need to talk about these things more, because I think women's sexuality has just been so under a big black cloud for so long, especially in scientific research. Absolutely not enough. So yeah, the more of this, the better, I think. And also, it's just nice to read about other people's sex lives, isn't it? Quite fun. So that's it for my anticipated reads this month. Next week I'm going to be doing my little reading vlog for this book, and I will see you then.